Start with a virus. Import it into America. Talk about it nonstop. Call some governors. Not them. Not them. That's your guys. Put patients into nursing homes. Kill thousands. Blame the president. Keep blaming. Blame some more. Lock down small business. Kill the economy. Push mail-in voting. Stoke a race war. Call for riots. Pick a candidate. No, not her. Yeah, that's more like it. Lock him in his basement. Shield him from the press. Don't cover this. Don't cover this. Don't cover this. Keep doing that. Ignore the economic recovery. Downplay the world peace. Pump the polls. Pump, pump. Don't stop pumping. Install your software in swing states. That was fast. Take control of polling stations. Call off the election when you're losing. Kick everyone out. Pull out all the extra ballots. Get the software to do its thing. Get the media to say it's over. Call the big tech guys. Ban anyone who notices. Act like the whole thing never happened. Stealing the most powerful republic in the world. It's that easy.
Well, it could be that easy. It won't be that easy anymore. But we got to talk about Dr. Fauci. Yeah, you know, the guy who just magically got a pardon that dated back to 2014. And their excuse was, well, you know, but Trump's going into office, so we got to give him a pardon. No, not unless you know he did something wrong. And it seems like as time goes on, the things that were considered conspiracy theories, or that were called conspiracy theories, are now being deemed to have been true. And the whole Dr. Fauci cover-up is just the latest one. So let's hop into it, because Tulsi Gabbard, shout out to Tulsi Gabbard. Hopefully, you know, her husband makes a amazing recovery, because if you guys didn't know, she stepped down because of her husband's cancer diagnosis. So hopefully, you know, her husband makes a recovery. But in basically her final day on the job, she released a bombshell. I mean, she pulled the pin out of the grenade, tossed it in a room, and slammed the door on the way out. And here it is. Check it out.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate, today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives. Now, these documents expose Fauci's direct role in influencing and manipulating IC assessments on COVID-19, and how Fauci lied to Congress in 2024 when, under oath, he denied knowledge of or participation in discussions with intelligence officials about viral research. We also received testimony from multiple intelligence community whistleblowers who reported retaliation for challenging the intelligence community's manipulation of intelligence on the virus's origins, once again revealing a clear pattern of suppressing dissent, silencing critics, and burying the truth. Dr. Fauci's close relationships with the intelligence community enabled him to assume three key roles that shield him from scrutiny. First, Dr. Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-function coronavirus research linked to Big Pharma and their pursuit of universal vaccines worth trillions of dollars. Second, Dr. Fauci was the behind-the-scenes advisor who, alongside his hand-picked so-called experts, pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars, all of this in a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame and attention away from Fauci's own actions. Third, Dr. Fauci became the nation's pandemic pundit, and he publicly pushed lies, disinformation, and censorship using every platform available. Now, according to hundreds of reviewed emails, which are included in this release, the intelligence community almost always incorporated Fauci's recommendations. He promoted a fraudulent paper whose publication he helped prompt as legitimate information for intelligence community consideration. Senior analysts praised Dr. Fauci not as a policymaker, but as what they called an unbiased guide to the real coronavirus experts, while deliberately ignoring experts who might dissent from Fauci's narratives. Now, Fauci didn't stop there. He blatantly lied to Congress under oath during his 2024 testimony to the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, denying that he ever spoke to any intelligence agency about COVID. Now, the correspondence I'm releasing today directly contradicts his sworn testimony. Now, we received statements from multiple whistleblowers revealing that the intelligence analysts who dared to challenge Dr. Fauci's COVID origin conclusions faced threats of retaliation, marginalization, and many suffered career setbacks. For example, a contractor was terminated just days after coming forward to ODNI as a whistleblower. Another example, those who advocated for the lab leak hypothesis or expressed dissenting views were reminded by their managers that leadership would determine which analysts would be promoted and which would not. The message was clear: go along or be punished. Senior leaders also sought to undermine whistleblowers by removing anonymity, which is required in the whistleblower process, as they made their complaints, and also insisting that their managers or attorneys be present during ODNI meetings where these whistleblowers were coming forward with their testimony, obviously creating an atmosphere of intimidation. The COVID pandemic caused tremendous hardship and pain for millions of our fellow Americans and countless people around the world. Now, after years of lies and censorship and cover-ups, the American people deserve transparency, truth, and accountability. The tactics that were used to hide the truth are straight from the deep state playbook. Politicized, self-serving leaders like Dr. Fauci covered up their own wrongdoing and abuses of power, manipulated intelligence, lied to Congress, and undermined a duly elected president by restricting his access to the vital facts he needed to keep the country safe. It's time you know the truth.
So, big shout out to Tulsi Gabbard. He used our tax dollars to fund the lab in Wuhan and then lied about it. When asked where the virus came from, he was pushing the narrative that it came from some animals and not the lab. And you know, back then, some people were even getting banned off of social media for saying some of this stuff. And it turns out that a lot of us were right. It came from the lab. It didn't come from these animals in some wet market or whatever that they were talking about that he was trying to push. It came from the lab that he was specifically funding. And not only that, he lied about it under oath. And so now we see why he received that pardon. But that's not all, because RFK Jr. came out swinging as well. And I want to play this clip for you guys because this is pretty crazy. Check it out.
Tony Fauci made sure that none of those kids had guardians, which is illegal. And then he hid what he was doing from the boards. He took foster homes in 6 states and he turned them over to the pharmaceutical industry. He made sure that the people who were running those foster homes did not even have medical training. Most of them were immigrants who came from the Dominican Republic. They knew nothing about medicine or responsibilities, and they were sickened when they realized slowly what they were involved in doing to these children, that they were torturing these children. And there's videos of these children, an old BBC documentary that will make you cry. I promise you cannot look at these without weeping. One of these kids, a 12-year-old who's trying to protect the 8 years old, and he has a tube in his stomach. And he's telling them, I tried to fight them, and this is what they do if you fight them. You can't fight them. You need to just take the drugs. And the kids didn't want to take them because the drugs were making them horribly sick. And Celia Farber, who's this amazing researcher who worked on this chapter for me and did a lot of the original research on it, she actually went up to Hawthorne, New York, to the Gates of Heaven Cemetery. She found the cemetery where Fauci was disposing of the corpses of these children who died in his illegal experiments. She found an open pit. It was actually covered by an astroturf carpet. She opened the astroturf carpet and she saw hundreds and hundreds of tiny little coffins stacked haphazardly upon each other, because these are children who have no parents and nobody was there to protect them. And Tony Fauci treated them as collateral damage. And, his objective was to enlarge the markets for these pharmaceutical companies who he had partnered with by allowing HIV, these toxic chemotherapy drugs, to be given to children. And then the next experiments, which are in the next chapter, which are equally horrendous, is his experiments on Africans.
So you guys heard that from the HHS Secretary RFK Jr. Fauci allegedly was making sure that these experiments could continue, right, on these little kids, these aid drugs, right? Some of them made these kids extremely sick, and some of them died because of it. And then allegedly their bodies were just disposed of in some mass grave. Now, I took the liberty to actually confirm this, and those experiments, those trials did actually happen in the 80s and 90s, where they experimented with AIDS drugs. That was a real thing on orphan kids. Like, how evil of a person do you have to be to look a kid in the face and intentionally make them extremely ill or kill them? An innocent little child. How much of a piece of shit do you have to be? And so it goes to show why he got that pardon. Just saying. As always, man, get in the comments. Let me know what you think about all of this, because this is just absolutely crazy stuff, man. Really, really crazy stuff. I want to play this news segment as well, speaking about a little bit of this, because there's no way, if all of these claims are true, and personally I believe that they are, but if they are, there's no way Fauci should be walking this earth right now. He should be, at bare minimum, in prison for the rest of his natural life. Life in prison. That is utterly disgusting. Allegedly running AIDS experimental drug trials on orphans because nobody's there to stop it. Their parents aren't there to do anything about it. It's disgusting. And then on top of that, the COVID situation. Check it out.
Larger effort to suppress the lab leak theory. Joining us to discuss is former federal prosecutor Jonathan Fahey. Jonathan, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Senator Paul was on our show last week and said Dr. Fauci's preemptive pardon from President Biden should be challenged in court. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We've never had a pardon that's gone to court that was granted for an unspecified crime. So he's been pardoned for any crime he might have committed over a 10-year period. He's never been charged with a crime. So how do you pardon someone in advance of a charge and for any crime they might be charged with over a 10-year period? So I think a court could look at this and say, that's way too broad. If you didn't specifically pardon him for something, he's not pardoned. So I think it should be challenged in court, and I think it's worthwhile. But he's guilty of several felonies. He's guilty of lying to Congress on gain of function, but he's also guilty of destroying records. That one's an open shut case.
So, Jonathan, from a legal standpoint, Senator Paul, I mean, he has a bit of a point there. There was no crime to be pardoned at the time. How strong is that argument that a pardon this broad and unspecified could be challenged?
Yeah, I think that he had a number of good points within there. Remember, the pardon only applies to federal offenses, not state offenses. So if any state offenses apply, that wouldn't cover them. But I think the point is sort of this overly broad question. A pardon, typically, he's right. It doesn't have to be something that's been charged or convicted, but it usually has to be specified as I'm pardoning you for this crime or this course of action. So I think that's a problem. The secondary problem is there's the auto pen issue that we've all talked about, but for it's okay if it's signed by an auto pen, but the question is, did President Biden knowingly and intelligently sign off or delegate this pardon? So that's a secondary question as well.
He didn't.
But this is certainly a unique situation to have such a broad pardon. I think what ultimately helps Fauci is the courts typically are going to give a lot of deference to the federal, to the executive branch on these types of things, particularly for pardons that are primarily, that they are an executive function. So even if a court doesn't believes it's too broad and believes it maybe not knowingly and voluntarily made, they still may not want to weigh into it. But there's certainly legitimate questions to be answered.
And you said, now this is only for federal crimes, so could a state still charge him with a crime?
Yeah, if a state crime applied to some of this conduct, a state could charge them, convict them, and the pardon from a president would have no effect whatsoever. So it would have to be in that state. The governor of the state would have to be a pardoning power there.
How does this work if the statute of limitations has run out?
Well, some of the offenses, the typical federal statute of limitations is 5 years. So meaning if you commit an offense over 5 years ago, the federal government can't charge you with that. However, he may have, I think there's been testimony in Congress that may have been within the 5 years. The other thing that's interesting, if there was a conspiracy, even if he stopped doing anything, 5 years ago, plus if the conspiracy continued, meaning to hide documents and other types of things beyond that within the 5 years, everyone involved in that conspiracy could still be charged. So he may not be off the hook if there's a broader conspiracy to be brought, or if his testimony was within 5 years. So those are sort of two key things to look at. But if everything he did and everything ended over 5 years ago, he may be in the clear, but I don't think it'll be that clean cut for him.
Well, these documents also include claims that whistleblowers and intelligence analysts who question the official COVID origins narrative face retaliation. They face career consequences. What legal recourse could those whistleblowers have if they were targeted for raising legitimate concerns?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, there's the Whistleblower Protection Act where they could sue under that civilly. There's also the False Claims Act that these people were essentially defamed by sort of Fauci and this apparatus. Remember, everyone questioning COVID initially that wasn't with the Wuhan, wet market theory was labeled a conspiracy theorist, sort of a wacko. So there are a lot of these people that were essentially defamed directly or put in a false light, which is also defamatory. So those would be their two courses of action, because these people are not only defamed or had other consequences, they suffered severely in terms of financially and career advancement as well.
And back to what you were saying earlier, if intelligence officials or government employees knowingly help bury evidence, lie to Congress, or retaliate against whistleblowers, what potential criminal or civil liability could they face?
Well, sort of if they're hiding and destroying evidence, you have obstruction of justice, which is a federal offense. Lying to Congress is also a federal offense. Conspiracy to do either one, meaning if they're conspiring to help someone lie to Congress or destroy evidence, is also a federal offense. So all of these could be a broad umbrella for anyone involved in this. So those would be the types of things. And all of these are federal felonies, meaning they carry sentences that exceed a year in jail, typically 5 and 10 years imprisonment if convicted, as for the maximum penalty.
All right. Former federal prosecutor.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to challenge that pardon. It's about time. 100%. And like he said there are some major questions with it. I don't think it's just a cut and dry situation. Hey, he received the pardon from the president, so hey, nothing to be said, nothing to be done here. No, I don't think it's that cut and dry. Okay, I don't think so. I think there are some serious questions about that about all of those pardons, quite frankly, that were launched through at the end of Biden's term. Major questions. So y'all get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions about all of this. Had you heard about any of this? All of this? Let me know. Stay safe out there. Peace and love. I'm out.